Welcome to The Eyes Have It, Unlocking Your Ancestral Code with Amy. I'm Amy G. Doherty, the founder of Irogenics Ancestral Eye Reading. And today we're going to be taking a look at ancestral healing through the eyes of Jill Mattson. Now, Jill is a prolific artist, musician, author, and a sound healing composer. She's a 5-time author awarded Best Music and Book of the Year, as well as having won the cover awards from the Coalition of Visionary Resources with 7 golds and 3 silvers. She was featured at hundreds of tele-seminars, 1,000 radio shows, magazines, including covers, and she offers an online sound healing school with free music at www.jillswingsoflight.com. And you can also find her at jillmattson.com. Well, let's bring in Jill. Welcome, Jill. Welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here, and it's such a joy and an honor to be with you and your audience. So thank you.
I think we're going to have a hard time sticking to an hour. You and I could go geeking out all day about sound, frequency, time, ancestral healing, vibrations, ancient teachings, ancient cultures. We can go on about all of it. But why don't you give our audience just a little preview of what you love? What's your jam where you're like, oh my gosh, this is the thing I just can't get enough of?
Well, I'm a musician, and I've been a musician knee high to a grasshopper. So that means I compose, perform, edit, record music. And I went on a spiritual quest, let's say, in my 20s, and I was looking for the most loving definition of God that I could find. And I started out in Christianity. I went into the Babylonians, Sumerians, Egyptians. I went all over the world. And I was just looking for ideas, thoughts, that when you think of God, incorporate God into your life, that it's just love. Um, so when I did this, and I'm a major geek, I've probably read a couple thousand books on easy in antiquity. And in addition to having really cool ways of filling yourself up and being love, it used sound for everything you can think of. You can use sound to grow your crops. You can use sound to heal your pancreas. You can use sound to enhance a God gene. I have a CD on that. You can use sound to hurt your enemies. You can use sound in your home and build it up with things because things emit frequencies. And I just went on this lifelong adventure and remembering these ancient techniques to use sound, to pull it in from the higher dimensions, to ground, to rearrange the sound in your body. And sound is a beautiful, powerful tool to fix about anything you want. It's
Wow.
like kitty bugs.
So tell me, do you think they use sound to build the pyramids?
Yes, I do. And in fact, I found an ancient writing which gives an explanation. One is that, okay, shapes have different wave interference patterns. So we look at a shape and say, oh, this is sacred geometry. But if you look at the waves, it's subtle energy, maybe perhaps reflecting in and back within the shape, you'll find that there's wave cancellations and wave additions, just like fourth grade science.
Mm-hmm.
In the cancellation spots, where there's not much of our reality, of the 3D reality, in comes in finer energy. And that is such a huge key. And the Russian had a study in which they saw a group of people looking at the aurora borealis, and it was like blue, and they all decided it should be pink. They just used their imagination, just a handful of people, it would turn pink. So the thought and the feeling and the subtle energy, we can control these things, but there's a quantity thing. So like we control them, something soft and subtle like an aura. And the Russians got all excited about this. And one of the things they did was they had these real big words for them, but in essence, it was like putting tinfoil around a person. And they blocked out all these normal rays. They created wave cancellation. And
Ah,
inside the tinfoil, people opened up all their psychic skills and got all this healing energy. So it's the same kind of thing. When you have different shapes and you have wave cancellation patterns, you create little portals. So this reading had all these different symbols that they would put under a rock that would be wave cancellations or little portals.
hmm.
And then they could create like different energy lines, ley lines, but they could also amplify that. And then they could use singing. In Tibet, I saw a video about 30 years ago. It's gone now. But
Hmm.
there was all these monks, and they would sing the frequency of a rock, and everything has a frequency. Just like
Right.
the singer who shatters a crystal glass. It's not any frequency that does that. It's the frequency of the crystal glass. So you have the same frequency, energy transfer. Crystal glass gets way too much and boom. But a rock is too heavy. It just gets lighter. And
So
so
that,
they would have the singers and they would dig a hole underneath the rock and they'd push it up and then they'd have the symbols with the wave cancellation and they would just like up it goes. So sound has a bit of anti-gravity. It
sure.
gets louder as it rises. It's just so small and compared to a gravity that's not too noticeable,
Right.
but up, up the big boulders go.
Well, that just makes sound healing like so plausible. Like you would think, well, of course you could heal with sound then. Of course you
Mhm.
could raise that vibration throughout your body and that frequency throughout your body and just heal something. And I think, do you have books or audios of this? Oh, you have some material on this, yes?
On the way on Rock from the Tibetans, that movie was, or video was taken down a long ago. But yeah, I do have it in books, and my new book coming out on time. I even have the drawings of like where they stood the musicians and what sounds and so forth. So, but as far as sound, you can heal by canceling waves. So you could cancel cancer frequency. You could heal by amplifying waves. So if you're low on even an isotope or something, like an isotope of calcium your body needs, your body's very specific and doesn't want anything but exactly what it needs. You can heal by looking at body processes, like Krebs digestion. It's a
Mhm.
chemical formula, and just put the sounds in it and start to beef up processes. I
Oh,
do several things where, well, like for bones, muscles, joints, I'll give you the frequencies of everything in your body that builds bones, muscles, joints. So I can give you the frequencies of the muscles and then the frequencies of the amino acids and the proteins that help your body to maintain it.
wow. And so many people have conditions, I'll just use the word conditions to blanket, that involve inflammation of whatever, or sugars, or buildup of this or that. Detoxifying has to be so important, yes?
Well, how perfect you asked. I'm just about done with the program now, and I start with detoxification, going in and loosening the detoxification. I also have frequencies to increase blood flow and circulation. And what happens is when you, let's say, I don't know, you're eating eggs and you got some of the Teflon pan in it, and now you're in it, someplace in there, there's a little piece of metal. Well, it digs right into those tissue walls and it digs holes, cuts, tears, and that's causing the inflammation. I was really shocked a while back because I do have inflammation music, and most diseases like diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancer, most diseases, heart diseases, inflammation is a precursor.
Yep.
So my new music coming out should be done in a week or two. Is on detox, and so I go through detox the brains, the muscles, the nerves, the tissues, and then I go detox per organ, um, and then I go into the flow and the different biochemicals that support your body, eliminating toxins that support your liver, that support your kidneys, because I think that the detox inflammation is
Mhm.
one of the biggest issues in the country, and it leads to most all diseases. And sugar, as you mentioned, feeds right into that because it builds little candidos, and then they have a byproduct of ethyl alcohol. So it makes you kind of groggy and like you have a hangover, and
Right.
your liver is over. doing itself, getting rid of alcohol from sugar. And so I even have frequencies complementary of Sherry Edwards from Sound Health Options to deter your desires for frequencies and alcohol. So anyway, that's my new program.
Wow, that's big. If you could just, not have that urge to pick up the candy bar, right? Or that glass of wine, that's so much of it because so many people, especially those who struggle with dieting, it's about the cravings. And as you said, one food pushes the craving of another. These ingredients all have their part in there. But if you could just not want it, just like you maybe don't like diet
And
soda
one
or
thing
don't
with
like
sound, before I promise miracles, is you do have to listen, and you might have to listen quite a bit. So there is an issue of quantity. Speaking of the ancients, their spells and their magic spells, they're all about quantity. So if I need vitamin C, I can take the vitamin C, I can eat an orange, I can listen to a frequency, I can look at a color, but I have to mass a certain amount, and I need to do that daily.
Mm.
I can't have one orange for my whole life to keep me full of vitamin C. So there
Right.
is a quantity issue. And with sound, when you're going in to heal something um, like a cut, it would come in pretty quick, or tissues, or soften your skin or tighten your skin, which I've done in
Mm.
one of my CDs. But doing something like your bones takes longer. So, like even orthopedic doctors sometimes will give their patients a little bone box, and they're giving you the frequencies of bones, and it resonates with your bones and it heals quicker. Back to the
Wow.
ancients, the Egyptians with broken bones, with a broken skull, like from working on pyramids, would advise sleeping with an ostrich egg. And in my youth, I remember getting quite a chuckle out of that and wondering what were they smoking.
Right?
But two reasons why that works. One is the ostrich egg is about the size of a skull and the same shape. And
Okay.
shapes create resonance in the exchange. So the mere shape is going to enhance the shape bonding on your skull. Two, the nutrients, the things that make up an egg shell and an egg are also things that help create healthy bones. And does energy transfer? Absolutely. So, I don't know.
Wow. They always say that. They say there's always some truth behind the start of a wives' tale or the start of something that doesn't make sense, the cutting off the legs of the turkey to fit it in the pan, right? Whereas there's some beginning, whether it was, real and successful or whether it was just a quirk that
Mm-hmm.
turns into something. But wow, I would have never come across that story to start with about the
It was
ostrich
in a
egg.
papyrus. It was very old.
Oh,
And
I love it.
I'm sure it's been laughed at for many years, and I was one of them. And then I was so embarrassed when I realized, oh my goodness, these people are using subtle energy and quantum energy, and it works. But there's that quantity issue. It's not like you can't look at an egg and walk away and expect to be better. They wanted you to sleep with it, so you had all that time to get the
Right.
dosage. And that's what magic spells are, like somebody's hair to get their DNA. And then you get an item that has this frequency, and then an item on the same octave of the same frequency, and some other item in the spell. And you keep building up quantity of the same frequency to get enough dosage.
Right. And really, that's kind of what prayer is also.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a
Absolutely.
frequency, it's an emotion and an intention, and it's a projection. You're sending it out.
Right? Or
And
Reiki. When you think about Reiki, does Reiki work? Absolutely. But with all of us, maybe to different quantities. So if
right,
Jesus were to do Reiki, he'd come out and say, be well. Okay, boom, you're well. He's packing quantity on his voice and in his energy fields. And we can do the same thing, and our voice and energy fields can also deliver that healing energy. But depending on our faith and consciousness, depends on the quantity or the power that we have to impart. So,
well, let's go take a look at those
okay,
beautiful peeps of yours.
okay.
Ta-da! Here's Jill. Here's Jill. So we haven't talked very much about your eyes, have we?
Not at all.
Perfect. So I'm going to say, first off, I remember one of our first conversations, and you just said, I'm an artist. And I was like, oh, shoot, I was going to tell you first.
Oh,
So These are the designer eye. These are absolutely the designer eye. So your birth structure is what's called the sensitive. And the people who have the sensitive structure sense, right? They sense things. You have more than five senses. We all have five, but you might have 12. You might feel electricity. You might smell
I do.
color
I
or
do.
hear color. You've
I
got
do.
different physical experience than the rest of us. Do you want to
I
talk a little
do.
bit about that?
I can see music as colors. I definitely cross senses like that all the time. I can hear my room. I wrote a feng shui book because I can hear shapes and colors, and dissonance in your room can create health issues. And it's very simple and easy to make your um, space harmonize or healing. It's quick, it's easy, it's fairly inexpensive, but it's because I can hear the shapes, the
And
emanating
you
frequency.
and you have a visceral experience of energy, yes? Like when you walk in a room. And
Oh,
you
yes.
maybe can't describe it, but you have a visceral, some kind of visceral
Yes, I
what's it,
can. I
receptor.
usually know what people are thinking and feeling. It's sometimes I try to block that because they don't always think nice things, especially when they think nobody else can cry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see dark spots in the room. I can feel them. I can feel where energy crosses in the room.
Yeah. Well, that's the sensitive eye structure. So we call this the mountain lion. You power up in stillness. So for you, you're like that. I don't want to say the bottom of the wave, but you're like that point. You're like that point where you sit, you sense, you sniff, the hair stands up on the back of your neck, your tail twitches, and then you pounce. So if you did any kind of athletics, anything that starts from processing the movement first, like darts, archery, tai chi, golf. In track, it would be like the relays where you can hear the person coming and you wait, breathe, go, right? And so when if somebody wants to pick a fight with you, all they have to do is push you, rush you beyond what your physical senses are ready to move to. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I am very slow, and I digest feelings because there's so many multiple complex waves, if you will, different levels. Information comes in, and I just like to sit with things to know my own truth before I speak.
That's exactly right. You're a processor, right? You process, right? You're like that coral reef in the ocean where the water goes through you. You're anchored. So people love to come tell you their stuff. They love to tell you their problems. It's the bartender eye, but they just love to, and they might just come and just, right, just kind of vomit their day on you and then
Yes,
walk away. They aren't necessarily waiting for advice. They just want you to absorb for them.
they do. I get that all the time. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry that you have those
Oh,
eyes.
listen.
Those eyes. But also you have so your coloration, you have this beautiful blue, but you also have what's called white amber in here, which is this kind of yellowish coloration. And what my experience has taught me about this is that you come from an origin of I mean, we all come through our parents, grandparents, great grandparents, but we're each tied to a different thread of ancestors. So our DNA has about 80 ancestors in there, but it comes from a pool of 4,000 going back 11 generations. So your attachment is going way back, time before recorded time, Lemuria, Atlantis, and coming forward through those wisdom schools, coming through some of the ancient teachings, the ancient wisdoms. And so you have access. And you don't just have access of knowing some things um, without having a reason to know them. Like you haven't read the book yet, but you also have, as you said, like a frequency. So if there's a book out there, you'll either be drawn to the book or you will just symbiotically pick up the information from the book, just like those Egyptians picking up the healing from the ostrich egg. Even though you're not like putting it in your head, putting it in your body, the proximity, the
I
frequency
remember
matching.
a lot of the stuff I write about ancient techniques, I get like a hint in antiquity. So, when I was younger, I read the ostrich egg story. I hadn't connected yet. As I matured, the next time I read it, I remembered. And then I was like, aha, I remember now. This is why this works.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. And do you see your pupil here actually has a little bit of an egg shape to it, or like an avocado? It's a little bit elongated.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
hang on, it's a circle, but you're not quite circular. I mean,
Yes. Yeah,
circular.
you're right.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Do you know, were you in the hospital? Did you have a major illness when you were very little, prior to age 2 or 3? Something you wouldn't remember. Somebody would have had to tell you about it.
Not that I remember. We didn't have a lot of money, so if I was ill, I probably wouldn't have been in the hospital.
So this is what happens with the pupils. The pupils take shape by about age 2 or 3. So that's pre-conscious memory. So just like we don't remember our first words or potty training, we won't remember what went on during that time. But this is
Hmm.
where everything went from being fine to everything being not fine very quickly. So it can be you tumbling out of the crib. It doesn't necessarily mean
Yeah.
anybody abused you. If abuse happens, it can show up this way. It is one of the few things in the eyes that does gender imprint. So, because this is in your right eye, it means that whoever was first on the scenes was masculine, was a man. So, let's say you tumbled into the swimming pool and um, you're fine, you're a baby. You're like, cool, I'm back in the water. And but a man is terrified and sees you and grabs you thinking you're drowning. And he grabs you and he's like, Jill, are you okay? Are you okay? And he's right in your face. That's the kind of thing that would leave this mark. And what it does is it shifts you from this initial personality of physically, viscerally feeling everybody's everything to now thinking about things, to now contemplating and processing and going from feeling
That's,
physically
that's
to
very
thinking
fair.
physically.
I did that as a young child. I would block things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
did
Right
that.
away going into that thinking part. Now, your ancestors, where we see this beautiful texture was here when you were born, as were these openings that sometimes look a little bit like somebody put their thumb in the cake frosting. The pupils take shape by age 2 or 3. But these crease lines, especially where we see crease lines or fold lines that go down all the way to the pupil rim, when they come through this collarette, this autonomic nerve wreath, when they come all the way through to the pupil, that's where we see where they had a large trauma that's likely to show up in your world, especially when you were young. And the reason I say that is because if it's weird, bizarre, unique, would only happen to you or happens to you over and over again, or people say, "Ah, only Jill," or happened up to age 8 to 10, it's ancestral. It's like an echo in time. So they had some challenge with altruism. So if we look at the eye, and this is 12 o'clock here, just outside towards the ear, this is where we find altruism. And altruism is when we give or do something that wasn't asked for and it goes wrong. It goes really wrong. So altruism, if you've ever had somebody say to you, well, Jill, I didn't ask you to do that. I didn't ask you to get up early. I didn't ask you to make pancakes. I didn't ask you to buy me lunch, kind of thing. That's altruism. Now, in your case, there's also some challenge, what we call sibling rivalry with boys. So it doesn't mean you get brothers, or if you get brothers, doesn't mean you don't get along, but it means your ancestors were involved in some kind of masculine competitive environment. So that can be boarding school, it can be sports, it can be military. There's a lot of places. But in your case, there's a marking here in this challenge with masculine competition, as well as some challenge with a patriarch figure, which, again, in our ancestors' time, could have been the king, could have been Sheriff of Nottingham. It was just somebody in
Got it.
charge.
Got it.
Patriarchal. Yeah. But you've also got markings over here in the left eye in challenges with the matriarch. So in your world, that can show up as no matter what I do, it's not good enough for that woman.
Yes, a lot of that.
Teachers, coaches, moms, sisters, anybody can qualify. Um, but also some challenge in sibling rivalry with girls, female competitive environments. Now that's
Very
your
much
music,
so. Yeah.
right? That's those jealous people for no reason. How come Jill
Hmm.
always gets this? How come Jill? How
Exactly.
many awards did Jill win?
Hmm.
Right? Who does Jill think she is?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would lean very heavily towards that. So usually what we see in the eyes, will
I
relate to
remember
that.
some past lives. In fact, I remember one. I found myself about 1700 and a 2 volume set written on that life. And it was every page, every detail. It was like a copy of my life today. Circumstances different, but not. And there was definitely male and female, like you said, the male and female authority problems going on big time.
Well, and with this marking and altruism and markings in all the family positions, I would not be surprised if you go back in the last 2 to 4 generations of your family and find someone who had to rehome a child or place them for adoption. But however it worked out, it was like they saw their siblings. They saw what their siblings got that they didn't. So it can be the illegitimate child of a king,
Hmm.
right? Or the illegitimate child of someone important, somebody renowned, where you're now cut off from your natural inheritance, so to speak. Um, but you're not one to buckle to it. You have it for competitiveness, even if it's competitive with yourself.
I am competitive with myself.
This is where we
I
find
work
board
very
games
hard. Yeah,
do work very hard. I think you work all the time. When I look at how young you are and I think how many books you've read and how many
I
places you've been, I'm
I'm
like,
in
did you
my
start when you were
70s.
I'm like, did you start when you were 2?
No, when I was 40, though.
Wow. Wow, you have definitely packed it in. Definitely packed it in. Your ancestors did have some challenge with the church. This is where there's been a direct run-in. So that's where someone got in your ancestor's face and said, you pagan, you witch, you can't marry that person, you can't keep that child. Have you been told the things you can and can't do?
Many times. And I think most of the people that are really good with energy, like, because I do a lot of past life and readings on people, and there was an awful lot of people killed as witches. Speaking of being a nerd again, I think I've read numerous books on the killing of witches. One book estimated like 8,000 women killed over maybe a 1,000 year period, and another book had 50,000 killed. So who knows what the truth is? But 8,000 killed dwarfs what Hitler did. There were a
Yeah.
lot of women that ran into trouble with the church.
And sometimes all it was somebody was beautiful,
Correct.
right? And somebody else was jealous. And the best
Hmm.
way to get rid of them was call them witch.
Yep.
Right, and come up with some story about why and what they saw and get
Hmm.
people thinking together. Yeah, it's pretty sordid business. I actually have a cousin who swims every morning in the lake in England where they used to drown the witches.
Oh,
I'm like, "Oh, my
clearly.
heart." I'm
Yeah.
like, "Good for her for putting that out in the universe," but wow, I don't
Wow.
know if I don't think I could do that one. There's not too many things in the world I would say I couldn't do, but that one is maybe on my
Well,
list
that's
of
probably then because you have been in a lake like that. And so maybe dig into that, feel it. Because when you feel it, just remember you're eternal and let it go.
wow. And me with brown and blue eyes, well, I'd have been the first one taken out, right?
You would
I'd
have.
have been I'd have been gone as an infant, right? I would have never seen age 2. Now, interesting enough, your ancestors had some challenge with not being heard. And what is it you do so well? Voice,
Yeah.
sound,
Yeah.
music. Yeah. And a little bit with escape.
Interesting because my family has never really acknowledged my music. It's interesting. And
Oh,
they're musicians. Yeah.
so in some you're still resolving that ancestral pattern of not being heard because your family isn't hearing you.
Yeah, I think I've
Yes.
gotten to the point where I'm
Doesn't
fine with
matter. Right, exactly. That's the beauty as we get to be this age, we're like, "Oh,
that.
whatever."
Okay.
And that's a big part of why these patterns happen when we're very young, because when we're very young, we are pure emotion, and our emotion is purely physical, right? When we're mad, every cell in our body is mad. I want it now. Don't, right? I hate you. We're just big balls of energy. And so this is why these patterns come up young. And then we get older, and then it's like, oh, let's resolve that. Let's not leave that one on deck. Let's resolve that. I do want to look a bit at ancestral images. Now, your eye texture, this very blanketing texture, isn't necessarily known for seeing images. It's affected with density and some other things. But nonetheless, you have some really amazing ancestral images. I'm going to go over here first because for me, this one is just like a painting. Let me see if I can bring that up for you. So there's someone here, and here, and
Oh,
here.
wow.
And this is how ancestral images work. They're right there in front of you, but you maybe don't notice them until someone goes in and says, hey, did you happen to see? Now, I know there's an image here in your pupil, and I can't quite make it out. I wonder if I
Oh, is
can
that
lighten,
cool?
right?
Yeah, that
Let
is
me
so cool.
lift that up just a, hang on, let me click that. Can't quite lift that one up, but you know what I'm going to show you is who is she?
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So what happens is you look at it 1 minute and you'll see a woman. Oh, speaking of, the woman with the slender long neck, string pearls, hair pulled up, dark hair, left shoulder. She's looking
Oh,
down.
yeah.
And she's right in that area of a challenge with the church. But you'll look 1 minute and then you'll look again. This now, when I look at it this way, it seems almost more like a child, a very young, like the baby with curly blonde hair. Maybe
Yeah.
hasn't had their first haircut yet, or maybe just has had their first haircut. But as you go through, you will find images and images. And this is the fun, right? I mean, this is where you really get a chance to hear
Oh, yeah.
long dark hair flowing back.
Uh-huh.
And what shows up in the sclera does not typically have a map, so to speak. There's just, it's a lot of times it's in the great grandparent phase that we find um, hovering out here, but it's not
Yeah,
like,
that is so cool.
isn't that cool? It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what age, they'll just show up in whatever way they can. And for me, I get to see these when I'm taking the photos, and I'll see like images scrambling around trying to get in the picture. And then the picture comes out, and maybe they're there, but maybe somebody else is there. And you're like, where'd you come from? But every time you look at your eyes, you will see different images, different gradients. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Different depth, different lightness. So images that show up on the surface, reflective images like this in the light, they will be different every time you take your eye pictures. And the ones that are in the actual fibers, when you see images in the actual fibers, those will be the same every photo. They'll always be there.
So if a spirit guide is working with you, it's holistic. And while
Yeah,
they're working with you, they are you. Or they blend, and that's
yep,
why you can see them in holographic prints. Perhaps you
absolutely.
could see them in your fingerprints as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely, right?
Or maybe in your
It's
voice print. When you look at
you
all the frequencies in your, this spirit might have the predominance of this tone. And so you would too.
that's true, and you were talking about that a little earlier. Can you explain to our audience a little bit about voice printing and balancing?
Yes, I can. Software again from Sherry Edwards at Sound Health Options, but everything in your body is holographic. Your fingerprints, your eyes, your voice. And your voice, the vagus nerve goes through your vocal cords, and so it goes to the far reaches of your body through the nervous system. So every frequency in your body, your stub toe, yesterday's fight, all of it, it's in your voice.
Yeah.
And you can break that voice down into component pitches like light goes through a crystal and breaks down into rainbow colors. And then I stack them all up in the 12, the C sharp, D sharp, and then I've created music with the predominance of those tones as well. So I can look at you and see you have 80 hits in 1 minute of G, but you have 10 hits in D. And
Right.
health is pretty much a 44 all along balance. If all your voice, you have the same amount of frequencies, you'd be perfectly healthy. I've never seen that. We all have personalities but anyway, so since the imbalances represent challenges, traumas, health issues, what I do is I analyze somebody's voice, I count and stack up all the pitches, and then I prescribe tones, just like the ancient Sumerians did. To them, music was astrology, and it was musical astrology, and they would listen to tones to balance out your frequencies to get
Ah,
help. And so, like if you had way too much D and not enough D, I'm going to give you the song of D to listen to because D will
okay.
actually cancel out G. And then listening to D also. So I'll take this kind of very stressed frequency chart and make it very smooth. And I do that with beautiful music. And the other thing I did, because the ancient Sumerians, they saw the night sky's musical. I mean, isn't that beautiful?
It
Anyway,
is.
and so like Aries is C, C sharp, and so forth as you go around. And in each astrological sign, so if I have a music C for Aries, and C sharp for Taurus. So in Taurus, you can go online and get tapings from NASA and Motorola and the different satellites,
Mhm.
buy them, or some of them are free, and I have them twinkling in the background in my music. So when
Ah,
I'm giving you a prescription of Taurus, you're also getting the influence of Pleiades, literally.
wow.
And so I go in, and maybe in a way, it equates to your eyes, where you see the spokes, and if everything was perfectly balanced, that's some sort of mastery. And so the tones, the ancient idea of using astrology for healing, not necessarily prediction. And that's what I'm doing with the voice. I'll analyze the tones and then prescribe the balance and then put in the star tones just because I think that's a twinkling fun idea.
I love that. You know, so if we're looking, so what I feel we see in the eyes, first off, I feel we're really looking straight into the DNA, like the DNA helix sliced like a tree slice, right? And so we're like looking down almost like fiber optics. And this is why things like EMDR, brain spotting, light therapies, they're getting an access point through the eyes. And so, what we find in the eyes, as I said, going back genetically, biologically, 2 to 4 generations from the time of your grandparents to your grandparents' grandparents, right? And so, if this was an access point, if you're looking at your eyes, what sound do you think you would use to heal them? Or do you think there would be a healing aspect in working with the eye photographs?
Hmm. Well, one thing might be the complementary color. There's yellow, so a little purple would balance that, and a little orange would balance the blue. I tend to be over nurturing. I'm a pleaser. Um, I have a lot of the qualities associated with the colors in my eyes. And no quality is good or bad, they're all both.
Okay.
So being kind and nurturing is really nice, but when you're nice to everybody without thinking and you're not sincere, that's pretty yucky. So there's a positive and negative side of every attribute.
I
And I know that I usually feel better when I wear oranges and some of the darker colors and the reds.
okay.
Because it balances me out. It balances out my personality. And I also find that many of my friends, when I look at their voice, the predominant tones in their voice, which you could parallel to these shapes, are my opposites.
Right.
So it's not symbolic that maybe we complete each other, it's literal.
Well, that makes sense. And so the other aspect I think is we're really looking at time. We're looking at your personal time evolution, you going back however many generations. And so, do you think that time is changeable? Can we go back and change some energy working with? Yeah.
Absolutely, and absolutely. If you think, well, I'll just tell you a story. Um, when I was younger, my brother and I were never really close. There was never anything wrong. We didn't hurt each other, no problems. But we didn't speak, and I just didn't have reason to. I probably hadn't spoken in an hour in my life. And so when I was 60, I saw this past life we were in. It was one with royalty. And it wasn't one to brag about, but he wronged me in that life. And I'd been carrying that anger. I felt it. And then I also flipped back into him as a child in that life, and I saw him so badly abused as a baby. And
Right.
I just melted. I mean, I just filled up with compassion, and I let all that trauma go. And within a week, he was on my doorstep. And he
Yep.
lives 6 hours away. We've been best friends ever since. So I forgave, and that was long ago, and it changed immediately. I give you another story. A lady, I was doing a workshop, and a woman came in a walker. She should have been in a wheelchair, and she had had umpteen failed knee surgeries. And we did a past life regression, and she was the general who had been defeated. And she
Mm.
was, I saw it so clearly, she was marching up in this little red coat, and she was going to bend the knee to the other general. He takes a sword out and chops her legs off at the knee, and she bleeds out in front of everybody. Now, we took about 15 minutes, which is, I think, a very long time, for her to let go of that anger. But we did, and she walked out without a walker. I didn't follow up with her. I don't know if it stayed, but she could barely move, and she walked out without her walker by forgiveness.
Yeah.
And so I definitely think that, well, even just forgiving someone who has wronged you in the past, that doesn't make it right what they did. It means you
Right.
take their ugliness out of you. You're free.
And just like your story about your brother, what I found in ancestral healing work is, so if something comes up that triggers you normally, like catty jealousy from girls. How come Jill gets this? How come Jill gets that? And normally you'd be like, "Ah," right? Just that moment, right? If in that moment you can just stop and go, "Ah, that is so ancestral. Give it some humor, give it some air,
Good
and
idea.
then
What a lovely, juicy idea.
give it some compassion. Just to yourself say, I don't know whose this was. I don't know when this happened to you, but I'm so sorry because it's 2025 and it stinks, right? So in your time, I mean, for these things to imprint in your eyes, they were probably life or death or lifelong changing situations,
Oh, yeah, I
right?
read
Having to
that
give up
book.
a child for
Don't worry.
adoption, having to rehome, a battle with brothers where maybe they were the sons of a king and one gets killed. Right? I mean, these were big deals for them to imprint in our eyes. And so to just put that compassion on whoever went through it, not knowing anything about what happened to them, all of a sudden that long lost relative can show up. The book you've been trying to find online for 20 years, somebody sends it to you as a gift. I mean, it's crazy the things
It
I've
is
seen
crazy.
happen to people healing ancestral aspects. It's just,
Time when you melt, it's like part of the thing is you don't know you have something to forgive. I had no idea I had to forgive my brother.
right.
No. And it's almost like I needed the story. And even if I felt that distance and I made up a story, would it have mattered as long as I forgive? And it's like, so when I have that tension or dissonance or mm,
Right.
hesitant feeling, if I get
Yeah.
underneath the feeling, feel my wholeness, feel, and it's like melt and relax and let it go. And you're different, and they become different, and your
It's
relationship changes.
exactly right.
Just
It's
like that.
exactly right.
And I
I
wonder
love
if your eyes change.
I love to do neurographic art for healing
Oh, how
ancestral
cool.
patterns, especially when it's people who are maybe adopted and they really just don't know anything about their background. But I'm like, you know everything because your experience was their experience, right? And that's what I didn't know growing up adopted, that the gift, if I had the gift for music, somebody had it behind me. If I had the gift for writing, somebody had it behind me. And maybe I didn't know who, but the fact that I had it was 100% verification that somebody had it first before me. And so working with those energies, and just finding that compassion key to say, and when you publish a book, you win a cover award, right? They're like, yes, all 4,000 of them, they're all buying in, every one of them, right? And when you have that day and you're a puddle and you're like, no, how does this happen again? There's 300 of them going, oh, sorry, that one was mine. I was on a ship. I was, so like I said, neurographic art is a great way when somebody's got a pattern and they just don't have any idea if they can work with someone wonderful like yourself who takes them through past life regression, etc. But if I'm just working with maybe kids where their parents are kind of like, that neurographic art can just wipe a bunch of,
Sure, because they haven't bought that imagination is just child's play yet. Imagination's a powerful tool.
oh, so powerful. So powerful. In fact, imagining these images in your eye,
Right,
right?
right. How
Look
cool
at,
is
I know, I look at who this is over here. You've got this whole strand of people going on over here, almost like a bunch of high priests or like teachers, like in the old Germanic universities or like the old
The
Orthodox
Druidic,
Church.
the Druidic universities.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
got it. You got it. And hang on. And this guy too, with the hat, the
that's wonderful.
collar.
Yeah,
I know, right? You made great photos, my dear.
thanks to you.
And this young girl here, she's so sweet. Here's her blondish hair, like with the sun on it, her left
Got
arm,
it,
her
got it. Yeah.
face. Yep, I'm not sure if she's got someone in her hands or if there's a man over here. Um, but the thing to remember is it isn't just traumas that show up in our eyes, right? It's not just so what we see in the eyes in my work is those things that are available for resolving where they've been a trauma in the past, or those things that are available for expression, those beautiful gifts, like your beautiful gift right here for sound and expression. And also here behind this lovely older gentleman, here also for sound and expression. And I keep looking at this, and I'm going to let you sit with this at some point. But do you see right here? It's almost like a letter R,
Yes,
and then almost like some symbols.
yes.
And of course, if you go big, you get something else. If you go smaller, but I'll let you sit with that because the energy just really
Symbols
struck
are
me.
energies, so they're communication, but they're also healing. We tend to think
Absolutely.
of symbols as symbolic, and yes, maybe so, but they're also sometimes literally the energy of something. Like cymatics is the wave
Yes.
pattern of something we hear. It's not symbolic, it is interchangeable. In the early languages like Egyptian, Sanskrit, etc., those languages, the sounds were the same as the vibrational pattern of a thing. So,
Yep.
like in Ben in Egypt might be move forward, but you spell it backwards or sound it backwards, and then you're moving back.
Yeah.
So you can create shapes like that. Like I've done runes and
Yeah.
I translated them into sound patterns because you can do that. And then the runes were used for manifesting, they were used for healing. They were the energy that equated to something that was a benefit. And you get energy by looking at it, but then I created the sound patterns to make it higher. So in here, it's like endowing you with those qualities because they're a shape, they're a sound, they're a color, and it's like a little battery giving off
Yeah.
energy fields.
How do you feel that groups of souls, families, heal significant issues in societies?
Well, I think that let's take abuse. So let's say I'm going to make up a story here. Let's say 20 generations ago, one of my relatives killed one of their children and buried him under the steps after the murder to keep the boogeyman off, or some custom like that, or sacrificed their child in a ritual for the good and the protection of the community.
Hmm?
So there is instances in history where abuse is murder. And the reason, and then it's like maybe I think generations might say, okay, we're going to take 10 generations and we're going to get rid of abuse. So there's this much abuse, this much abuse, this much abuse, this much abuse. I saw that in my own life because, my mother had some issues. She was really rough, and she was broken a lot. And yeah, I know my sister was in counseling until she was in her 60s. It was a pretty big deal. And when she died, I found her diaries, and she was such a different person as a child. And I saw her just get broken. I mean, just killed and killed. I just saw her just fall and tank.
Yeah.
And then I had compassion for her, and I was angry at her parents because they're the ones who did it to her,
Right.
and particularly my grandfather. And then I flipped out of my body and I went into his youth. And my mother had it so easy next to what he had. And it dawned on me that I think groups of souls can work on clearing up problems that for humanity that are too big to accomplish in one life. And it gives us a different perspective. So let's say you have a mother or father with challenges. Well, if you look at them as in a relay race, that they gave you less than they received, because nobody abuses unless they're abused first. That's learned.
Right.
And
Yeah.
when you start seeing them as a fellow person on your team.
Mhm.
It's one of those excuses that just lets you mount and let go of all the anger that you have. You don't need.
Right.
And it's also with resonance. So, um, like the 100th monkey is, once 100 monkeys learn something, the whole species does. Because
Right.
of resonance, the shape, the skeleton, the body of the
Mhm.
monkey resonates with another, and you only need a certain percentage. In
Mhm.
that manner, our group thoughts, our diseases, they can follow us in resonant patterns. My sisters have had problems with Alzheimer's. One died from it. My mother died from it. All my
Mm.
aunts died from it. A big thing in my family.
Yeah.
And I remember one time in my 40s, I was coming home. I was very tired. I was
Mhm.
exhausted. And I was daydreaming and just tired of it all and just gave in to the
Oh.
daydream. And I was a
Mhm.
mile from my house and couldn't find my way home. I just
Wow.
lost it. And then I realized that what that cloud of Alzheimer's felt like. And
Yeah.
I felt like it was genetic. So it came to
Mhm.
my mother, it came to my sisters. And so now when I feel that, because I often do, man, I'm right on the stick and say no. And it obeys, it goes
Yeah.
away. So consciousness follows intent. And if you say no, you really mean it, it's no. So these clouds of illnesses, it's like they resonate with us, they come to us. Family illnesses, you can say no. And in a positive way, same with virtues.
Yeah.
So it can come in the genetic field, but it can also come outside.
Yeah. Of course. And you're going to be in the cover awards, yes?
Yes,
And that's
yes,
coming right up. It's coming
yes.
up in April, the voting in the cover awards. Tell us a little bit about what you've got in for entries this year.
Okay. For mind, it's a beautiful music. It's a music collection, and it has the frequencies. Speaking of Alzheimer's, for healthy brain, it has the amino acids, neurotransmitters, hormones, in it amounts that you would find in a healthy brain. So the chemicals, the neurochemicals, they're grouped in little categories. So one is specifically for energy, another one's for focus, another's for sleep. And you can listen it towards the day and you're going to enlarge your quantities, enhance your quantities of melatonin or other chemical elements you need for sleep. So when you go to sleep later on, you've got it to
Great.
fall asleep. And brain health, you see energy, focus, brain health, sleep. Anyway, 5 different qualities, but there are about 50, 60 um, things you could buy, supplements or things that improve the brain health. And I love it, especially with my lineage.
Right, of
I
course, right?
tell
And
a difference. Just one listen, it's like,
yep, a
yeah.
solution. And so you have one entry in the cover awards coming up? Awesome. And that'll be coming up in April. So you can get the trophy just like mine back there. The cover awards are great. Coalition of Visionary Resources. So please watch for Jill there if you get an opportunity to vote. Cover is a great organization anyway for supporting people who are in some of the new age, but really in the holistic arena, doing
Yeah.
great things, ancient and new. They're just a really great supportive organization to be a part of. Now, do you have some books coming out as well?
Yes. Well, I have 4 in print. I have kind of an overview of sound healing, sound health in your body. A lot to do with Sherry Edwards and putting everything in your body as a frequency and then modifying it for health. Then I have one on feng shui because I see the importance of the symphony you create in your room and
Yes.
how you can design your home for a child with ADHD. You can take an issue and create like a continual energy machine in your home to lift to that. Anyway, and then I have a book on this is really good, The Lost Ways of Time. I start with
Mm,
music from legends in Lemuria and Atlantis, and very different. And then I go into Samaria, very different than what we consider music, and all these purposes. These 1,000 books I read, and then through China and then Egypt, and I go through all these cultures. Each one has different music for different purpose, different methods, techniques. They hid them because music was power. So
yeah.
if you, like in ancient China, you had to rank really high up in the pecking order in order to have a musician. And even what shape they were allowed to stand in because shape matters. Anyway,
Yeah.
cool things. So I saw that that the music changed throughout time. And what was interesting is that the mathematics under music is the frequencies are math, the rhythms is math, the timing is math, the pace is math. So you look at the math, and the math goes 9, 8, it's sequential over time. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, over 5,000 years, nobody's telling people, okay, you're only allowed to have this kind of math. And
Right.
so the book documents and shows quite clearly that music, it's very purpose driven. It's not at all what we think it is. It's so much more than entertainment, and that it makes sense in a very large global picture. And so that spawned the next book. So I decided clearly the thing that caused that is time. Time
Yeah.
is a frequency, time is an
Right.
energy, like everything else, moving with the frequency, vibration, cancellation, portals.
Right.
You can look at the mathematics under it, it's very close to music. Step in, step out, modify it, go forward, go back.
Mhm.
And um, so the book goes into time. Time is music, time is, I don't know, just time is portals, time is like a vending machine to get this, to
Right.
get that, and
Right.
so forth.
Yeah.
And so,
Stepping in and out.
yeah, and that one may be coming out in about 6 months. And then one after that on the solfeggio tones and applying a bass 9 math or an ancient method called Pythagorean scheme.
The Pythagorean theorem?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, not theorem, scheme. It's a
Mm.
little different. And
Okay.
you just convert it to a base 9. And
Okay.
once you get into the base 9, you see these 369 patterns, which Tesla and Kepler bragged about being an energy source where they could fuel cars and your everyday life. And Mark Roden did the same thing. He's a scientist alive.
Right.
369 patterns, nobody can make sense of it. But I think you need to use the Pythagorean scheme because I think what dimension it's in alters the mathematics.
Right.
And then you have to take the music song, if you will, or the mathematics, put
Mhm.
it down in electric and magnetism. So, like, think that Europe has 50 cycles or 50 volts, what different unit, and we have 60. You know, there's different cycles per second in
Right.
electricity. So, can you play songs in that
Yeah.
octave? Well, certainly. Can you have
Right.
6 nines in that octave? Certainly. So, anyway, I'm all excited about that.
Well,
So,
no, it's like you said, there's that dip when you're in the wave, right? And
yeah,
in that dip, the missing number is 12, right?
exactly.
And
Because
that's where
then you're
power
complete. And
is the
when you're
power.
complete, well, you can either get an amplification or you
Mhm.
can get a decrease. So, like when you look at time, you can look at time like in a Platonic year, which is the ancient idea of cycles and time periods. So, if you look at the Platonic year and you superimpose the mathematics of harmonics on it, you'll
Mhm.
see that civilizations rise and fall according to the pattern of harmonics,
Yeah.
music, and
Yeah.
time balances the harmonics.
Yep.
So, I don't know. It's just so, and when you see a cycle ending and beginning, it's like breathing in and breathe it out. It's like the still point between them. You get this
Right.
portal,
Yep.
and that's why ancient people would say this day is good for this day is good for that because that was
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. Right.
Energy of time there,
All based on
and you
time.
can use it to your benefit.
That's it. That's it. Oh, how lovely. Jill, we could go on for another hour. We could. And we probably will once we get off the air. We'll be like, still going. Um, what a fabulous experience. Your ancestral healing is so important to the world. You gave some amazing examples today that I talk about all the time. When you let go of something, when you resolve something, when you can just interject that in between the breath, right? That 1 second when you normally would have gone off, when you normally would have reacted, if you can just for a moment go, oh, that's ancestral. So sorry you went through this, guys. I'm so sorry. You could just change the world, not just your own, but all these people around you. Things can show up and the magic begins. And there's clearly a ton of magic coming out of Jill Mattson's house and more to come this year and beyond. Thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thank you, and thank everybody for listening. I
Yes,
think
thank you
the
all.
most incredible people watch these shows.